Hello everybody, Strangers103 here today with something a little bit different. Let's talk CVs, I guess. Now, the game that's currently loading up in the background is my Shoukaku, or Shoukaku game from the NAEU Community Contributor event that Shipcomrade set up. First of all, thank you very much Shipcomrade for setting this up. This was absolutely amazing fun. I really enjoyed it. I'm sure everybody enjoyed it as well. Great success, over 2,500 people on Twitch. Holy crap, seeing that number. But the purpose of this, well, first of all, I wanted to show you guys how shit I played in this game. And the second one is to just talk a little bit about CVs, specifically in competitive. Now, I don't want to get too overboard with this, and part of this will be commentating on the game itself. But without further ado, let's actually get this started. Oops, let me just remind myself that this doesn't work. And there we go, select all the squads. Now, we are on a standard battle on Ocean EU team. We picked 4 North Carolinas, a Chapayev just for the radar. I don't know how the 3 Kutuzovs wound up there. Pretty much, I think everyone just decided they wanted to play one. 2 Bensons and a Fubuki. The enemy has a Bismarck squadron of 2. 3 Atagos, 2 Kutuzovs, 2 Benson, 2 Fubukis, interestingly enough, and on top of that, a Radar Chapayev. Now, before I get too much into this game, I want to put it this way. Yes, I just bombed next to Jedi. I like doing that. I've emptied this bomber, and I'm sending it straight down the mid. You can see the order of it if I select it like this. You can see this plane is basically just being told to fly straight down the mid and see what it finds. This is important. You'll also take note that I'm launching dive bomber, then 2 fighters, then my 2 torpedo bombers, then the last dive bomber. I could have done it differently. I could have done both dive bombers, annoyed the fuck out of Jedi twice, spilled his captain's martini or tea or what? Well, it was tea this time. But anyways, getting back to the situation on at hand, the enemy team actually has the advantage on this map. They have a brawler aggressive setup with 5 smoke screens, a radar, and a lot of cruiser firepower. We, on the other hand, had a interesting setup, I guess you can say. 4 North Carolina certainly isn't bad, but it does mean we're gonna have a tendency to blob up a little bit more. Spotting the enemy Kutuzov down there, enemy fighters finally showing up. Already seen their destroyers, their main fleet moving up north. We pretty much know this already, we're heading down south. At the moment I'm keeping my fighters in reserve, just stacking them up, using this single dive bomber, spreading my strike wings around. I'm looking for an attack down south, because they seem to be the split off group. Keeping my fighters now, actually my dive bomber group gets attacked by anti-aircraft, and I'm not exactly sure it was. Having rewatched from the NA perspective, I know it's actually, as a matter of fact, as I mostly try to dodge the ICS's strafing, and my number 3 squadron does a very funny circle there, but I thought I was being anti-aircraft by the Kutuzov, but I actually wasn't. I rewatched it. I was actually being AA'd by a Fubuki. Anyways, ICS decides he wants to early lock my fighters. I'm not so sure that's a good move by him. Unfortunately, it's a Fubuki next to it, so I don't actually have a friendly destroyer that can defensive AA down the plains for me. But look at the cluster of ships behind. ICS is never going to get an attack on anything even remotely that direction. And because he's used double strafing, he's out of fight ammo, so I can unlock my fighters and start panicking those, and most importantly, slowing down these planes. Unfortunately, I was basically out of ammo, so it didn't really matter, but, you know. Having a look at the fighter trade, we basically got away with the equal. I think the fighter squadron that flew down there was a 1 plane as well, so we basically both of us get 3 planes out of it. Now, trying to line up an attack on Little White Mass down there, holding my alt button now on the screen just so you can see whether or not a defensive anti-aircraft is triggered. I really totally expected to get defensive AA here, and not getting defensive AA despite having a plane launch really actually caught me off here. It's not something I actually expected to see. The only ship I actually expect to not ever carry defensive anti-aircraft, believe it or not, is the New Orleans. From a competitive standpoint, at least. But then and again, with this many cruisers, not having defensive anti-aircraft and solo isn't that bad of a choice, and from my experiences of playing a little bit on the NA server, I'll just leave it like this. Not many CVs are there, and pretty much every single CV I met in the 15 games I played on NA server, all of them sucked fucking dick. Like, even more than the EU ones suck somehow. I know if you find Q in a Fubuki down there. Right now, I'm launching my fighters above launching my dive bombers, and to be honest, I should launch one dive bomber, which I already have in the air right now in the back, down in the bottom right, but I should launch the other dive bomber after cycling my torpedo bombers. Misplay on my end, not paying too well attention. iChase is right now chasing my dive bombers, so as you can see on the map, it's being ordered to just fly circles around, and this is what you do as a carrier, and you're seeing that my dive bomber isn't really gonna stick around, so I send it back down, spot the CV. He actually spots this, and I realize it just a little bit too late. iChase realizes it, he's gonna do a strafing into this, it's perfectly fine, I don't care about him getting this, and he's just wasted that ammo. Mistake I'm making here, Dive Bomber Squadron number 6 should be down there to spot Q, not my fighters. Losing fighters here would just be a wastage of planes. And I also know that one of his fighters are currently chasing mine, so that's perfectly fine for me. But Q never turned his anti-aircraft on. The only time he had his AA on was actually when he shot at my fighters in the beginning stages of the game from Invis. But yeah, as you can see on the map deployment, we're pretty much pressured on the 2-3 line. We don't have much control of the map, and if the enemy get any much farther, they're going to start spotting me. However, we have reasonable control of the southern area of the map. I respot Q with my fighter, which I just left their AK. Both enemy fighters are now chasing me up north, which is perfectly fine. And I'm really just going to leave my dive bomber up there right now. Trying to keep Slay up, make sure he goes down. I try to commit the drop on him in case that doesn't occur, but the kill is confirmed. Cookie the Girl got spotted. I make a very hasty misclick drop just to get the bombs out of the way, and I'm about to lose my dive bomber squadron up north. iChase has strafed it away, but since I was paying more attention to trying to dive bomb Cookie the Grill, this actually never occurred, and I never realized that he only had one fighter squadron available to do anything. Right now, I'm just using this empty bomber to try to bait his fighters, just keeping Notster spotted right now. He fired his guns, so even Flammer would be able to keep him spotted as well. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get scouts up here earlier than this, so Flammer's going to, well, die to torpedoes. Definitely could have done better spotting those, but, well, I'm pretty inexperienced in CVs in competitive overall. Haven't played CVs in competitive at all recently. Now, here, iChase pulls his fighters down here, and I'm actually not sure what his status of those planes are. What I didn't know is he only actually had one attack bar of ammunition left. But anti-aircraft takes down my torpedo bomber squadron. Not sure if he actually had focus anti-aircraft commander skill or not. That's a very interesting thing to take. But right now my priorities, due to the team having such stupidly large amounts of anti-air, use the dive bombers to bait anti-aircraft from my fighters, so that they're not suffering too many losses if the enemy are clicking on the planes. Try to whittle down iChase's fighters so we can negate his scouting in the later game. What happens right now through the fleet isn't too important because we're still reasonably clustered and there's a crap load of cruisers, and a lot of them are all running defensive anti-aircraft, so that's perfectly fine. That enemy fighter is now out of ammo, but I don't want to just auto-attack it down. Take no risks, so I'm just going to strafe it away on the way home, because I know it's out of ammo. I just unlatched it and did this. Spotted by the dive bombers in the middle, not a major problem, because they're basically empty and flying out, limping away on pretty much no health, while I'm keeping my dive bomber here to try to spot the enemy destroyers. And, well, if I kept a bit of track of the destroyers in the early game, this wouldn't be too bad, but while the game stabilizes itself a little bit now, let's talk a bit more about the role of CVs. Now, in team battles, where it's 7 versus 7, it's 1 CV to 6 surface ships. Also, with the 2 battleship rules in team battles, basically 1 CV, 2 BBs, you cannot have more than 2 battleships. There's usually also 2 destroyers, anything from 1 to 2 destroyers, which means that you do actually have a large amount of viable targets. And a 1 to 6 ratio isn't too bad. In OMC Cup rules, 9 versus 9, 1 CV, 3 BB, this changes a little bit. Due to typically, well, at least with a 9v9, it opens up a lot more possibilities for you as a carrier, and as a team with a carrier to start splitting up a lot more. Equally, it also... Anyways, yeah, I kind of dodged that one. I'm just really trying to bomb alert right now. I want to get a couple of extra fires and damage on him, but what the fuck, RG, all of it dropped to the right. And realistically, the hope there was just to get him to trip damage control party early, but, well, I'm going to lose a dive bomber squadron for it, so it's fine. Back on topic though. In 9 versus 9, the carrier is still able to do something because teams with 8 ships, it's one carrier to 8 ships now. The team itself gets a lot more possibilities to spread out. And what this means is that you realistically aren't going to be seeing too big of a blob. However, once you get to 12 versus 12 and you still maintain 1 CV, you are pretty much just, to quote iChase, an overglorified scout. Your planes don't have the power to really attack into anything because the 2 blobs, even, it's 1 to 11 ships, even if you deduct, say, 2 destroyers from it, it's 1 to 9, you still have a blob of 4 and a blob of 5. You don't want to be flying any plane into a blob of 5, that's devastating to you. Of course, with a midway, you can just throw your 3 dive bombers. If you are flying 1-1-3 personally, I still suggest 2-1-2 in this situation, because you do still have good enough strike to make it worth something, but most importantly, you have 2 fighters that you can actually make use of. Of course, personally, I wouldn't recommend flying a midway in Tier 10 competitive due to the fact that you don't actually have that many squadrons, which means you don't have the utility required to do too much about it. Right now, I basically just want to auto-attack iChase's fighters down, in case he... well, first thing was figure out if he's trying to do any funny strafings on me or not. Jedi down there, he is actually isolated, so he's going to get caught out and probably killed by iChase, which is, for me, actually fine. He's not going to, he's never going to attack me. But I'm not going to show you this drop, I'll just tell you, it is a defensive drop, but in 12 vs 12, 2 CV, however, it's no longer 1 CV to 9 planes. That changes quite a bit. It's now 1 CV to 5, because it's 2 CVs to 10. You see what that means for the CVs. Now, also, the second thing is you have a second CV to coordinate. So what that means is that you suddenly have a lot more CV power, and keeping that CV alive well, not so much alive, but keeping the CV's planes in an advantageous situation compared to the opponent's planes gives you a lot more striking power. What this means is that the 10 surface ships are going to be much more likely to blob, and of course, spec anti-air. So you suddenly go from just being an overglorified scout into being probably the primary force of your team, just like, well, if you take a look at some certain World War II battles, exactly the same there. It was basically this fleet blob CV, CV fuck everything. Now, iChase, just like I didn't realize the Cleveland in the first game, he didn't realize that we had a gazillion ships inside the smoke. That fighter just ceases their existence. I'm trying to bomb, wasting some time gaming here. I'm trying to get both my planes in. As you can see, I'm ordering one of them to fly past. Unfortunately, I did not actually intend to drop both, but both of them squadrons dropped anyways, and only 1 and 2 bombs fucking hit. So I was a little bit salty after that one, but I realized the mistake I'm making right now sometime soon, and I pulled one of the dive bomber squadrons away to spot some stuff, because I don't really want to be losing my fighters. Go on, strangers, do it already. There you go. I pull the dive bombers in because it's much better to sacrifice dive bombers than losing fighters, but by now it doesn't really matter because iChase is pretty much deplaned. Of course, so am I, but I still have more than enough torpedo bombers to actually play the game. iChase doesn't, because he's wasted a lot of them throwing them into my fleet. By now, however, I want to stack both my fighters up and kill that last enemy fighter, because beyond this point, it doesn't really matter what my fighters do once his fighters are gone. He's out of strike as well. I think that's actually his very last squadron he has available, so he's deplaned halfway into the game already. Well, I still have more than enough torpedo bombers to actually make a difference. I'm trying to keep my fighters reasonably close to each other so that I can mass 5-on-3 if need be. Right now, it's not actually that important. He only has 2 planes, so he cannot actually head-on strafe kill anything, realistically speaking, so I'm just going to accept the head-on strafe because it gives me the panic ability against his fighters if he's not careful. And there you go, they're dead. So right now I'm just ordering my fighters to try to find... Oh no, iChase still has planes, but let's just have a look at them as I drop on Keviseed. That's 1 single squadron there, that is not a stack. He's basically out of, other than that, completely out of planes. He's gonna try to long drop Aerroon though, and Aerroon has a concealment build, so it's actually not the world's best. But, there we go. Last fighters have latched onto his torpedo bombers, and I think Aerroon's AA killed it off. Let's also just select that last bomber. Right now I'm just flying my dive bombers basically around the map looking for stuff. NA's been kind of congested into the corner. They tried to make an early push against us, but they never really smoked their fleet too well, so we were able to pick off quite a few of their ships. Their southern fleet mostly got annihilated, so that's also good for our team. Respawning Trevzor here, the team coordination was something along the lines of, let's try to kill that last destroyer, because it gives our 2 destroyers time to play, especially if the enemy carrier is out of planes. And this is really the role of the second role of the CV, is to keep enemy DDs and planes from your DDs. And as I'm keeping my planes on top of enemy DD, enemy CV is out of planes, stop it. So Trevzor now basically has the pressure to run the flying fuck away back to his fleet. Just, I guess you could say, stay alive. Because if he gets close and then he gets spotted, he's going to get fried. Just like our remaining destroyers, I think they're not doing too well on health. There you go, so Izzo, 2.9, and there you go, Lady Torpedo, not doing too well either, but she's actually the farthest ahead, so I'm just keeping one of the fighters somewhat close, keeping the last enemy destroyer spotted so that Lady Torpedo knows that she cannot possibly get outspotted by any other opponent as long as she does not get boxed into a corner. She will be perfectly fine. But as you see, still having 5 fighters to none of the enemy can be really nice, as it gives... Well, by now I've pretty much understood that IHS is completely 100% the plane, something that surprised me, but it basically means I have 2 dive bombers and these remaining fighters to use as scouts. That's 4 squadrons to the scouts for 1, 2, 3, 6 surface ships remaining, 2 of which are basically going to be permanently spotted because they're battleships. Now, they do have Little White Mouse Atako down south. If you watch the stream, you'll know I made a call out that she was the one that had defensive anti-aircraft. That's incorrect. She was not the one with anti-aircraft. It was actually the cruiser up north that had defensive anti-aircraft on the Atako. And what Flammo said there is actually true. If NA had pushed the advantage, they would have killed me, because I don't have anywhere to run. And they would have then picked up the rest of the team through smokes and their radar. And the game would have been quite firmly actually in NA's favour, because they actually had the counter set up to ours. We have a long game setup. NA had the pusher setup. Except, have a look at the map. Nah, nothing really came out of it. Those base marks have been at the back of the map trying to snipe for most of the game. So, yeah, NA didn't fare too well there. But let's be a little bit objective about the CVs. I've done right now 84,000 damage, 18 planes, which I believe is a bit less than iChase, but he strafed away 3 of his own, so I have technically 21 planes, because of the initial strafing that he did on the first one, which is the only strafing he actually called friendly planes on, so I'm at least on 20, because I'm pretty sure he killed 2 of his own. Again, just having a look at the situation, they have a cruiser down there, they have stuff up there. iChase is completely out of planes, but even in this situation, it's going to be very difficult for iChase if he, for example, wants to protect the northern push that was pushing up here, like he did. He's basically leaving the entire southern area of the map basically unattended, if you want. Now, with 2 minutes left of the game, I'm losing my dive bombers, but that's perfectly fine for me to lose my dive bombers, because they serve their purpose of being scouts, and their destroyer, Trevzor, just went down to Chrysanthos, taking him out of the game, and and you know, losing my planes for that is perfectly fine, because I also kept their destroyers for the latest stages of the game, at least pretty much out of it, and I also helped our guys kill off Q down south, which is the first destroyer to go down, I believe, and if you look at it, we still have 2 left. And sending my fighter down to spot this Atako to find out what Little White Mouse is trying to do. Not really much. 1 minute 45, she's pretty much out of the game, despite being like 13 kilometers away from me. But with this little time on the game, there's actually absolutely nothing that Little White Mouse can do to kill me reliably, because you can't really detonate a carrier, and even a quad 4 fire isn't really going to kill me. Not fast enough, at least. And I just get spotted, which is another mistake. With only 1 minute left of the game, by now it doesn't really matter too much, because we actually do end up winning this. But if you look at this, low HP, mediocre HP, mediocre HP, selfish smoke, is like, Izzo's not keeping Felon, there's another smoke up here. I think that might have been Izzo's, so Felon's probably going to get caught out and killed. Now, we do have a point advantage, but if IHS doesn't go down, and none of these guys in the back go down in this time, if we lose 2 ships, we still lose the game. So this is actually still a very dangerous situation for NA. But just in a final word in the last 40 seconds, compare stats between CVs well, it's not really a thing. You can't really compare the statistics between 2 players. It's really their experience, their know-how, and how much they can serve as a force multiplier for their team. As my ass gets set on fire, holding the damage control party because there's only 30 seconds left of the game. I'm not really going to die, but I'll just leave my CV cam over here, and you can see ISO, desperate last smoke against Felon. He's still going to go down though, it doesn't actually matter. 2 fires I think are going to kill him right now, and there's a points transfer. But you are just glorified scouts. It's all about keeping stuff spotted for your team, preventing enemy spotting, especially in a 12v12 1CV game, because it's 1 carry to 11 ships. Thank you guys for watching though, hope you enjoyed it, and see you in the next one.